All righty, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Narragansett School Committee at 7 o'clock. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight. This is really exciting to see a full assembly room. We're super excited for our showcase and really glad that everyone took the time to come tonight. So we did not have any executive session tonight, so there were no executive session votes. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Cummings to do some introductions because we're going to start right away with our showcase.
Great, thank you, Tammy. Well, we are excited to welcome our Narragansett High School computer science program and robotics team here tonight. And so I'd like to, first of all, say how proud we are of them. They are kind of launching off into a new and expanded robotics program. They have their first competition this weekend, which we're hoping and wishing them lots of success. And they showed off their abilities at URI this fall and were kind of the rave of the state. Everyone was really amazed by all the great work they're doing. So I'd like to start by introducing Chris Hers, who is our computer science teacher and the advisor of the robotics team. And Chris will get us going. So welcome, Chris.
Going to make sure that microphone's on because we have a lot of people that watch from home too.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you very much for having us here tonight. I'm Chris Hers. I'm one of the computer teachers at the high school. Last time I was here, I was very excited because we had just come from the URI CS for Rhode Island competition, not competition, demonstrations. And the kids were really super excited, and I showed that to you, and then I guess you invited me down here. So very thrilled to be here. And I'm just going to let the students introduce themselves. We have 3 robotics teams and 1 VR team. So first up is Bridget and her team.
Hi, my name is Bridget. I'm the planner for one of our robotics teams at the Narragansett High School. I have my teammates here with me today. I have John, the builder, Grace, the operator, Sam, a programmer, and Aiden, the other programmer.
Can they stand behind you as well if they want to? There's no pressure, but if you guys can kind of like make a semicircle around because we're live streaming, and so we want you guys to have, yeah, there we go. All right, yeah, thank you. Thanks.
So what is robotics? So it deals with the operating, designing, and construction of robots. At the high school, we create and compete robots, and this will be our first year competing. We compete at VEX Robotics competitions, which are nationwide events for high school students interested in computer science and engineering. So this year, each team around the country is tasked with creating a robot that most effectively shoots and moves disks. As you can see in the field, in the photo to the left, we have yellow disks on the ground. The goal of our robot is to pick up these disks and shoot them into the nets on either corner. The team that most effectively performs this task scores points, and the team with the most points wins the competition. So I'll hand it off to one of our programmers, Aiden.
Hello. Our robot's design has 3 major parts. You can see the wheels on the bottom. Those allow it to move in 4 directions. The conveyor belt on the back allows it to recover the discs across the field. And the flywheel in the front, or at the very top, allows us to shoot the discs into the hoop at the top of the, on the diagonal parts of the course. in our engineering journal. We had a few designs before we settled on the design that we have now. Our original design had 2 flywheels, as we believed at first that would be more effective at throwing discs farther. But through trial and error, we discovered that 1 disc or 1 flywheel was more powerful and more effective with our robot. Now I'd like to present Anthony from Team 2.
Hi, I'm Anthony. I'm the driver for Team 2. I'm here with my team, Juan, who's our builder, Justin, who's one of our programmers, and Ryan, our other programmer. So one of the things you do a lot when you're building robots and working with them is modifications. As you can see in our pictures here, we had an original system with actually 2 of those wheels with rubber bands on them, but we discovered that applied too much pressure to the disc on its way up, so we removed 1 of them and just kept 1, but that didn't give it enough momentum to get to the top to the launching system. So as you can see in the final picture on the right, we've tweaked it to have wheels instead of like a rubber band system, and we've messed with that to get the best, setup possible. Another one of the things we've all been working on a lot is the launching system. We've tried out a couple. We originally had a side-mounted circular launching system, like the one in the third picture, that the discs would get stuck under it. So we decided to try a push launcher from behind, but that took up too much space and was in the way. So we've evolved to incorporate other things. So now we have a new circular plate-mounted launcher, which works a lot better. And so I'm going to have Team 3 come up to talk about their companion robot now.
Hi, I'm Jack, and this is Nick. We are part of Team 3. Our robots, I started building my robot in our Cisco class. Mr. Hers asked me if I wanted to join the robotics team. I said yes, because I like working with my hands and building robots. It originally started as a really small robot, because I just wanted to have something that would work. Then I found out that you could expand your robot. I set up my robot so the wheels on the back, the 2 large wheels, those are used to turn the rollers, which are on the next slide. And then there's a section on the right. It's this, the chain. It allows us to get points for how many tiles we cover in the arena. Our robot's objective is to collect as many discs as possible and either give them to one of the shooting robots or to or put them in the other team's spot so we can get more points for us. Here's another couple of pictures of our robot. One on the right is our robot using the wheels to turn the roller. The middle photo is us using the chain, and left photo is us using our plow to move discs.
Yeah, so we kind of have a support role in this, admittedly less cool than shooting the discs, but we get to drive around really fast and score points by offensively putting them where the enemy team doesn't want them, and then we also can turn that roller, and that gives a ton of points, which is very good, and definitely don't want to miss out on that. And yeah, that's our robot. I'm the programmer, he's the builder and driver. Thank you.
So those are the 3 robotics teams, and if you have any questions for them, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I do. So I want to first say that you all are very well spoken, and that was very interesting. And it's impressive the work that you're doing, but it's also impressive to come here and give a very succinct, clear presentation. So I don't have much experience at all in robotics, but your presentation was great because I was able to get like a high-level overview I think that's really cool. So one of my questions is, so I know you've got a couple of the robots here. Do you have the, controllers or anything you need that you could do like a very, like small, just have it move, have it launch something? I'm not sure. I'd be interested in seeing that. If you're able to at least just have it move and launch something if you can.
Just not towards us.
Yeah, just not toward us. I don't know what the, yeah. Thank you.
We're still fixing a couple things, but.
We're not going to end up with like battle bots here, are we? Like, which would be cool too, but.
It shoots pretty far, so I won't do it in here.
Okay.
But you can see it, the disc spins and.
That's cool.
And while you guys are doing, where you did the demo, is there someone from the group that can come up and just share, like when you guys were at URI, like how did your teams go? Like how many teams did you compete against? Did you make it to like finals? Like if anyone can kind of come up and just say, all right, there were 32 teams and X, Y, and Z, like how did any of the 3 teams do?
So our first competition is on Saturday in Massachusetts. The URI event was a demonstration. We showed off to URI students. We also went there and saw their computer science projects. But we will, our first competition against other schools will be on Saturday.
Do you have any idea how many teams or how many different schools are going to be at Saturday's competition? Like a. Thank you.
Aidan was saying this is our first time going to the competition. I know that there's supposed to be a minimum of 8 teams, but rather 8 schools, and each school will have multiple teams. So it's really hard to say how many will be there, but there's a minimum of 8 schools to have an actual competition. So.
I know some other committee members have some questions either for the students to answer, or if they're not sure, then you could, Chris.
Sure.
Who has a question or comment? Alex and then Diane?
Well, just to echo already the compliments, just wonderful job all around, very professional, very well spoken. This is just really mind-blowing to me. I only wish that we had these kind of resources when I was at Narragansett, so it's really amazing to see how far this program and these opportunities have come. Just a quick show of hands, how many of you plan on going into engineering or consider that as a career path in the future? Very cool. And just 2 other questions. How long does it take for you to design a robot like this, like on average?
So we've been designing them over the past few months. We got the parts shipment in October. And ever since then, we built them, then we programmed them.
Excellent. And then one other thing, when you're competing, are you competing at the same time against other teams? Are they like going at each other? Are all 3 of these robots working at the same time, or do you guys have like shifts? One goes out, collects discs, the other goes out and shoots it on the next shift?
We can actually, the field,
Slide 3 or 2, I think.
This is the field. So you have two robots at the same time competing. And so they'll be trying to shift the discs from their side to the other side, or in trying to score it into the hoops.
And you have like an allotted time, like designated?
So we have, as you said, two robots in there. Both teams would have robots in there, and the robots aren't allowed to, like, fight each other.
Yeah.
That was the first thing we all thought too. But so you'd have usually something like the pusher robot and one of the launchers in at the same time, so you can get both of them. And there's two phases to it, really. There's an automated phase at the beginning where the robot has to pick up and shoot the discs, all with just being programmed to do so. And then there's a very short driver phase at the end where the driver gets to come in and try and clutch it up at the end if they can to do that. Yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, I wish you all the best of luck. I'm sure you're going to make us all very proud here in Narragansett, and I very much look forward to hearing how you all do. Thank you for coming.
I have a question for the design of team number 1, Bridget's team. I didn't understand how the disc is moved up the ramp to get to the wheel.
Yes, so we have, if you see on our robots, there is like these, how would you phrase them? Yeah, they're kind of like conveyor belts that move it up the shafts. So this moves in like around some of the, I don't know the correct terminology. What are yeah, the paddles move it up, the conveyor belt, and the disc shoots out from the spinning wheel. But I'll pass it over to our.
Okay, so with our robot, we have 2 sets of conveyor belts, and at the bottom, it is just one belt that kind of collects the disc off of the floor, and it spins around the same, I guess, axle that the top conveyor belt does, and we have paddles on both belts that kind of help grip onto the paddle and bring the disc up to the wheel where it kind of shoots out.
Do all the teams that are going to be competing this weekend in Massachusetts start with the same materials, the same equipment?
Yeah, we all have to order, all of the pieces have to be from VEX Robotics, which is the program that basically runs the whole thing.
Okay. And do you know, one of the slides said that there'd be the shooting and then other tasks. Do you know what some of the other tasks you're going to be asked to perform are?
So other than the shooting, there are these rollers on the walls of the on the border of the field, and if you can roll it to your team's color, that is 10 points added to your team score. And another, so the picture on the right is the robot rolling it to the designated color. And on the, like the left side of the robot, that big like track, it is for, there's one part where you have to see how much you can expand your robot over the tiles, and that will gain you more points as well.
Very interesting. I was interested in your description of the trial and error process from your original designs. So it's always an interesting process as you're moving through the development. So best of luck this weekend, and please let us know how you do.
Mr. Hertz, you're going to do some VR slides, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments from school committee about the robotics before we move on to the VR portion? Jen?
Hi. I just want to say congratulations. You know, sometimes when we think about teams in schools, we don't necessarily think about a robotics team, but this is absolutely fascinating. I do see a couple of young students in the audience, and I was just wondering if you could tell them how you prepared to be ready to be on the robotics team. Like, were there certain classes that you had as a prerequisite to take in order to help design and strategize?
So you kind of just like walked in and said, I want to do robotics, and then they just let you do robotics. And that was pretty much it. Yeah.
Is the committee ready for the VR? Any other questions or comments about robotics?
Just a quick best wishes for this upcoming Saturday. Good luck.
Thank you very much. So our next team is not really a team because there's no competition, but they are a team in that they work together quite often. And they're a fantastic group doing some really wild programming. And so I'm going to bring up Maddie and her team.
Hello, my name is Madison Lennon, and I'm the leader of the virtual reality team at Narragansett, alongside Jared, who is our 3D modeler, and Avery, who is our scripter. So as Mr. Hers said, we're technically a team, but no one else in the state knows how to do virtual reality, so we don't exactly have a competition. So with our team in virtual reality at Narragansett, we use two major programs, which is Unity and Blender. Unity is what brings all of our creations to life in virtual reality, and Blender is what we use to actually be able to make them. On our screen here to the upper left, we have a main script which allows a player inside a virtual reality headset to interact with objects to trigger our bottom right's animation. On the upper left, we have Blender, which we use to create 3D objects and modeling. And the stick figure looking character there is compiled of a bunch of bones called an armature, which can be compared to a human skeleton, which actually allows computers to tell apart the difference between a finger and a toe when you actually enter virtual reality. And on the right is our object actually fully rigged to work like a human and in VR. Here's a few examples of some modeling we've done through Blender and Unity. On our bottom right is a spawn we created, so at our URI presentation, people wouldn't be lost in an abyss of creation. And in the bottom right, we have a cafe we created for a coffee machine that Avery scripted for players to be able to interact as if it were a real coffee machine. And on the top, we have our mascot of the team. You might have heard of him. His name's Rocco. He is a flying rock who needs coffee. So on the right here is our coffee machine, which this is a prefab or a preview of the model itself with animations fully triggered to get an idea of what's going to happen. And on the left is our script in Visual Studio that actually lets this machine run, but also lets people interact with it. And then here's an inside look at just some team building, storyboarding, and actually presenting at URI. And a special video to actually show us what it looks like inside of our creation through VR lens. So here is our town that, a fun fact was this was an original desktop game that these two were working on before I transferred to this school. And once Mr. Hers learned about my experience with virtual reality, we formed a team to bring it to life. And then here's the coffee maker in action. As you can see, it works as if it were a real espresso machine. And here is in the script from the first slide being toggled off by Avery interacting with the rock to complete the goal of giving Rocco coffee to complete the game's final goal of putting him on top of the mountain. And then there's any questions?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm just curious, is scripting synonymous with coding, or is there a difference between the two?
It's It's very similar because coding is more so with programming, while scripting is for virtual reality. I should let Avery answer this if you want to talk about what you've made.
The difference between scripting and coding is pretty much negligible because you have to write script for both, but there are multiple different forms of scripting, like visual forms, like for example, the animation or the script for the animation that we showed here. There are multiple different types of forms, but more or less it all does the same thing.
I'm just curious, 2 questions. What year are the 3 of you? And if any of you are thinking about, after high school, pursuing computer science pathway or animation or VR or gaming or any type of career interest pathway. So what year are all of you?
Madison and myself are both in year 11, while Jared over here is in year 10, I think, yeah. And me personally, I do think I want to pursue a career in game design or anything of the sort.
My parents always told me when they figured out that I started doing virtual reality on my own hobby that it was the future of the world. And it really inspired me to actually pursue, hopefully, a career in either cybersecurity or designing virtual reality for the benefits of the world.
Ever since I was a child, I've always been interested in designing games and having code to make sure that they work properly so that everyone in the world can have fun playing games.
Well, I'm so glad that you have this kind of hands-on opportunity in high school. So whatever path you want to take, whether it is, VR in the medical field or gaming or coding, or I think that's awesome. So are you finding that, I know you're only, in sophomore and junior year, but having these opportunities, is this helpful, very helpful, a little helpful to, like after graduation, to help you figure out what you might want to pursue?
I have always believed myself to be a one-person work. I never thought of working with a team before until I met Jared and Avery, and I've learned how much more proficient and fun it can be when you work with someone else. And it's really let me show that this doesn't just have to be work. This can be something fun, but also teaching other people, like when I taught these guys how to import things into VR. It just feels so inspirational to be looked up to and teach other people how to do these things.
Any other comments or questions from the school committee for the VR crew?
No, just saying, my mind is blown, and it's, really incredible job that the three of you are doing here, and to see the advances and the direction that we're going in, it's just really reassuring to me, knowing that you guys are our future. And I guess just a general question, you said you came to Narragansett. What was your general background coming into this?
So I originally attended South Kingstown High School, but with their very limited computer, I've always been interested in computers, and when my family figured out about Narragansett's opportunity with the computer CTE, when I swapped to Narragansett, it was a miraculous change, not my grades, but also my future. I finally found a place where I felt I can express my passions without being told to do something else. I feel like I've made a voice and I can finally have an impact that I have control over.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and I know we all really appreciate you sharing that with us. And again, wish you all the best, and I really look forward to seeing more of this in the future. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, actually, I was very nervous when I saw that part of the presentation was going to be on virtual reality, because I remember 4 or 5 years ago, was it Mr. Hertz, when you first got some of the goggles, and we were over there trying to get ourselves out of a maze, I think it was. And I was nervous because I was dizzy for the rest of the meeting. So I was really very happy to see no goggles and no gloves.
Well, thank you very much. And this is where all of that stems from. So this is all of the mostly the same equipment that we've had since then. Not that we need new equipment, I'm just saying that it's still working and it's working great. We had 2 difficult years of COVID, which basically eliminated the program. And if it wasn't for these 3, it would have never made a comeback. And I'm just so grateful that they decided to take an interest in it and spend a lot of time working on this stuff. They're a really good crew. And my next phase for them is I have another student, these are plans they don't even know about, who's very good at storyboarding. And so I'm hoping that maybe that I can get them all together as a team and start doing some other stuff. But if it doesn't work out, we'll see. But it's great because it's still going on, and they're juniors and sophomores, and they're going to be the leaders for the next kids that come in. So thank you.
Great. And, I just want to compliment, first of all, everyone for the amount of time and effort and creativity and dedication that you have. And I also just want to say, really public to thank you to Chris and to Sam Schneider, another one of our computer science teachers, for the amount of time that they put in to making the resources and the rooms and the opportunities available for students. So it doesn't happen by accident. They're very intentional in how they create these opportunities. So it really is a wonderful program, and the synergy with teachers and students and parental support is amazing.
Any other final comments or questions? All right. Well, thank you all. We're going to take like a 3-minute recess because I know you need to get the robots out and it's a school night. So we're going to take a 3-minute recess from our meeting, and thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
meeting. Okay, here we go. It is now time for open forum. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Okay. No one for open forum? All right, so we're going to move on to oral reports from the school committee. Does anyone have a report to give? Alex, you want to go first?
Sure. The Health and Wellness Committee met yesterday afternoon to review the wellness survey that will be sent out to the teachers and staff. Through the collaboration of the Mental Health, Nutrition, and Physical Activity subcommittees, we compiled a list of services and activities that the staff will be able to provide feedback on. So we're very much looking forward to hearing about what interests the staff have and what areas of focus that the Health and Wellness Committee can focus on and address. The diversity team will also be meeting tomorrow afternoon. And then finally, the Rhode Island Association of School Committees will also be holding their traditional School Committee 101 session this Saturday at the Crown Plaza, and I plan on attending. I look forward to the session and get some professional development hours in. Thank you.
I have another to present for the building subcommittee, which we met last week. We covered all the major purchases for the building that we're expecting for this upcoming season, and to present that information to the town council at our next budget workshops. That's really, yeah, that was pretty much it.
Diane, do you have anything? Okay.
No, I'll see you there Saturday, Alex.
Yep. Jen?
Yes, I just wanted a short report on the technology subcommittee. We met last week. We talked about some of the things that were expenses we were going to incur for hardware. Very detailed meeting. We talked a little bit about the future and some security measures, and we'll be talking about that in the budget, but I think for the most part, I was very, very impressed with the whole spectrum of how organized it was and how clear it was. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. All right, we are moving on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Cummings?
Great, thank you. So over the last month, the accountability ratings have come out for all of our schools. So I have invited Gail to come and just give a brief overview. You know, as setting context, right? So this is the first year that accountability ratings have come out since the pandemic. And so Gail will kind of go over some of those pieces and where our schools landed and how they compare to other regional schools.
Okay, great, thank you. So I know you have had this in your packet and you may have had the opportunity to see the slide deck, so I'll try to go through it as quickly as I can. The components of Rhode Island's accountability system, it has to do with the performance measures that we'll talk about in a few minutes. And from those performance measures, we are given a star rating. And then it is decided based on that rating if your school needs to go through improvement through RIDE, or school districts on their own, when they disaggregate the data, decide what they need to do for improvement. And then each school gets a report card based on all of those measures as well. So the measures that are used to evaluate our school performance for academic, that would be the RICAST in ELA and in math. Soon to be science will be part of our accountability system. That will start next year. And also for the school day SATs. So we look at how our students achieved and how they have grown from year to year. We also look at student absenteeism, teacher absenteeism, suspension rate. We look to see which students have exceeded expectations based on those assessments. And then we look at graduation rate for the high school, of course, and the commissioner's seal for students who were exceeding expectations in both math and ELA. So the one big difference in how the accountability was determined this year that would affect us would be that they adjusted the cut scores for student and teacher absenteeism, And that was just because of COVID, that the absenteeism rates were higher. So as a state, they made some adjustment to those cut scores. So that would be a difference as in comparison to how they were done a couple of years ago pre-COVID. So what do our star ratings mean? So a 5-star school would mean that we had strong performance on all of the indicators that I mentioned in the second slide. A 4-star school, generally strong performance. A 3-star school, there were some areas of weaknesses. It could be that there was one particular subgroup that didn't do well. It could be a participation rate. There was at least one or more area of weakness. A 2-star school, weaknesses at the overall school level, and the 1-star schools, those were the schools that RIDE would require them to participate in some school improvement activities. So I thought this chart was interesting for you to see across the state how many schools received a 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5-star rating. So you can see at the elementary level, for example, 38 schools received a 1-star and 14 schools received a 5-star, and so on from this chart. I also thought you'd be interested in knowing how our star ratings as a state were from 2019 compared to 2022. We had 96 schools that decreased in their star rating, 29 schools increased, and 155 schools stayed the same in their star rating. So how are those ratings computed? So think of this as a rubric, and these are all the categories that we're being scored on. Of course, some of them are only for the high school, like graduation rate and the commissioner's seal. And you are assigned points based on how you did in each of these areas. So there are cut scores for you to be receiving 8 points or 6 points or 4 points and so on. And the lowest rating that you get becomes your star rating. So in this particular slide, and this is not one of our schools, but you might look at it and say, well, we had 4 stars in 2 categories, and we had 3 stars in other categories, but you had 2 stars over here. So this particular school would get a 2-star rating.
Right. So I just want to emphasize that piece because there's a lot of pushback with which I agree about that system. So for example, you could have 5 stars in 6 out of the 7 areas and 2 stars in one area, and you would be a 2-star school. Yeah. And so when you're looking at our ratings, what I would encourage you to kind of drink in is that always we will take the feedback and act on that feedback. But certainly the star rating in the case of Narragansett is not always reflective of the overall experience of students and families in that school, right? It may be one indicator where we need to do some work. The second thing that I'll emphasize is that when you are looking particularly in areas of testing, because our cohort sizes are remarkably small, there is a disproportionate effect of 2 or 3 students that may not have shown growth, for example, or who may not have scored well on a particular section of a test. And so that has a disproportionate effect in comparison to another school where those average sizes are kind of washed out by a higher sample size, okay? So I'm not saying that to make excuses. I'm more saying that to kind of give clarity to the data that is used to make these ratings, and where, as a small district, there can be disproportionate effects from a relatively small number of students.
So the next couple slides just show you where we stand as a district in all of our 3 schools. NES had a 3-star rating, and just like Dr. Cummings said, if you look at their table here, you can see that they had some areas that they received 5 stars in, but because of this one area that it was a 3-star, they became a 3-star school.
Right, and that is very specifically growth
Yep.
from grade 3 to grade 4 in mathematics, as in grade 3, those students did incredibly well. And so to maintain that level of growth was really difficult. And they did have a drop-off in grade 4, without a doubt. Their scores are not where we wanted them to be. They did fine on their basic scores. They just didn't have as much growth as we would want them to. So because that growth score was only at a 3-star level, the whole school is, but when you look at all of their other indicators, they're pretty high.
Our peer school also earned a 3-star rating. The same story pretty much as for NES.
Right, and I just want to add one thing about middle schools. So the middle schools are the only school where all 4 years are tested. And so it is particularly challenging for middle schools to get to the 5-star level because at the high school, for example, it's grades 10 and 11 that are tested. At the middle school, at our elementary school, it's grades 3 and 4. At the middle school, it's all of them, okay? And so, again, any blips or any cohort kind of needs really, again, have a disproportionate effect in that middle school.
And Narragansett High School earned a 4-star rating. Good.
In particular, I just want to call attention to the high school and to the middle school, actually, where the work in mathematics is starting to have an effect. And so, you know, if you think before the pandemic, we were having some concerns about the high school because their math scores were kind of dragging down their rating. You know, we're seeing some improvement in those math scores, and we're seeing the effect on their scores on this.
So I thought you might be interested in seeing how we did as compared to our neighbors. And the only way I could really think of was to do an average because there's different numbers of schools in all these districts. So you can see that we're right in the pack with you know, South Kingston, North Kingstown, and Charahoe, sometimes a little bit higher, sometimes a little bit lower. We had an average of 3.33 for our stars, South Kingstown 3.28, North Kingstown 3.37, and Charahoe a 3. So if I were you, I'd be sitting there saying, so what did you do with all this data? So as an admin team, we had an hour-long appointment with RIDE where they went through with us how the calculations were made, looked at each school so that we could pinpoint how we can improve moving on and to find those areas that we can do better in. For example, at the high school, there was one subgroup that didn't do as well as they could have. So now we know we need to spend some more time and effort with that particular subgroup. Participation rate, you need a 95% participation rate to get all your participation points. So we had a couple students that probably could have gotten a medical exemption, but because we couldn't get the parents to sign off or the doctors to sign off in the timely fashion, we would get a 0 for those students because they were considered non-participating. So now we know moving forward, we really have to keep on looking at the participation rate if students are out on medical leave, trying to get the doctors and the parents to sign off on that so we don't get a 0 for that. For NES, and for the peer school, looking at coaching. We are doing a lot of coaching in math right now. We have a math series that is relatively new at the elementary school called Bridges. The teachers are getting coached on that weekly by the coaches, and they had Curriculum Academy. At the middle and the high school, we were lucky enough to receive a sizable grant from RIDE, where the Savvis vendor is sending in coaches to work with the teachers in their classrooms to make sure that we're using the materials with fidelity. We also implemented IXL at the high school this year, which has embedded SAT practice. And finally, we have new coaching cycles that I'll talk about at another meeting with you that gives teachers some more support. So we are truly looking at, where we did well and celebrating that. As Dr. Cummings said, we're starting to see some movement in math with the new math materials, definitely with the new ELA materials that we implemented at the high school 2 years ago. So that's good news, and we're hoping to see that with our new math materials and new ELA materials moving forward. But also, taking a breath and looking at, from what RIDE went over with us, where can we do better on and how can we do that moving forward? Any questions?
I have one. Oh, go ahead, Jennifer. Well, I'm just very happy to hear that there's been some pushback on RIDE on the determination of the star ratings, because it just never made sense to me that the lowest category becomes your star rating, as opposed to the average of all the categories. So I hope the pushback is successful. Is that coming from the superintendents and?
It is, and there are a couple of, I would say, process issues, right? That certainly how the ratings are constructed is one piece of it. The timing is also challenging, because it would be nice to have these ratings, if not before the school year starts, at least very early in the school year. By the time we get it in December, we are fortunate in that we have a great team that disaggregates the data pretty early, and none of the things that show up on the accountability ratings are surprises. We don't get this and go, oh, well, we didn't know. Someone was, we know. And so once we get the scores, where some of the holes are, and they are reflected in our interim assessments, so we know along the way the things that we should be working on. So none of these things are ever like, oh, kids aren't doing well on X reading concept, we didn't know about it. We've been making adjustments along the way, putting kids into intervention. It's a lot of the tutoring that we've talked to you about. So, as we go forward, the accountability ratings are, as we know, often a reflection or a snapshot of how a certain kid does on a certain day, on a certain exam, right? We worry about them for sure, and we take them seriously. But we take just as seriously students' growth over time on our interim assessments. And so you will hear us talk about them, those interim assessments, closer to the end of the year, where we will be able to say, X student as measured by iReady or IXL was at Y reading level at the beginning of the year, and they've made this percentage of growth. That is another measure that is not necessarily reflected in the accountability ratings, but might be a little more reflective of what students are really doing, because it's not based on just one day snapshot. It's based on a lot of data collection over time. And so these matter, they're important, we take them seriously, we use the data, we build on the data, but again, I think it's probably a picture that is holistic, that gives us a general idea of what's happening, and then we have other sources of data to get into the weeds to look at the causes of why something might be happening.
And just to recap from the past school committee meeting where I came and presented the RICAS results, especially for our new school committee member, after that meeting, we spent the whole month of, half of the month of November and the rest of December, where the coaches went to every grade level that took the RICAS, and the elementary school, the ones that came before, and went over with them, here's how we did, here are some items that we did really well on, here's some items that we didn't do well on. Why not? Let's talk about that. Is it pacing? Is it materials? Do the kids need more practice? So we met with each cohort of teachers to go over that data with them so that they can plan for improvement. So they're using the data to drive their instruction. And the IXL and the iReady, that is huge, because that is real-time data. This is kind of becomes old because they take the test in the spring and then we don't get results until the end of fall. But with iReady and IXL, we're getting them 3 times a year. So we can see actually how the kids are doing real-time and determine if they need to go into interventions or do they need enrichment or, you know, are they on grade level? What are we going to do about that? Do they need tutoring? So those pieces are really crucial to our students' growth and improvement.
Thank you for organizing the data this way. Being a teacher and I have a lot of experience with other districts as well. It can be confusing looking at the data. I think looking at the data, congratulations to Narragansett for kind of holding them their own. I mean, it's tough in a small school district when you really only have so much to depend on. So, you know, in COVID, I think you guys did a really good job keeping it where it needs to be. So congratulations on that. Couple of things. So when we talk about the software diagnostics, the iReady and the IXL, you know, as a parent and as a teacher, I definitely see a disconnect with the standard testings and how the diagnostic goes and how the RICAS goes. So, and I'm sure you know that, but just really digging in and looking at that, I think is really important because you could take one student who is taking a diagnostic and does really, really well on it, and then when they go into the RICAS, doesn't do well because of how the software is set up. And so that, I just think, you know, when you come out of human-to-human interaction and introducing or practicing concepts with a software program, some things can be missed in that. So I am really happy to hear that there are interventions, that you guys are focusing on that, and that you also have, you know, set up for the interventionalists to come in and tutors to work with the kiddos. So I think you're already on top of that.
Yeah, we would never just look at one piece of data either. We always triangulate the data when we have our team meetings with the students. So it's classroom performance, it's, you know, teacher assessments, it's iReady or IXL. We look at multiple sources of data to make our decisions.
So, sometimes it's hard though with the particular student, and I'm just saying, you know, in a small district, you can probably really get to every student, but then like Dr. Cummings was saying, it only takes a couple of students to kind of throw off the curve, which is really, really difficult. So I think you guys did a really good keeping that, and I have no doubt that the scores are going to go up coming out of COVID. My last thing is, just as we come to budget season, are there new things that are coming up now that this data has been released that you're starting to think that maybe we need to put a little more money into certain supports? That's just my concern. You know, I would be open to just kind of hearing those. You might not know them now. I know this just came out a couple weeks ago, but that would just be, you know, one way where, you know, let's get on it. That's all.
And yeah, so thank you for saying that. And certainly that is part of our budget process. And one of the places where we have put a lot of resources over the last couple of years, particularly through COVID, is in our interventionists. And that has really, I think, paid great dividends. And so we're going to request to continue to support the level of interventionists that we currently have. And they were increased during COVID. And so we want to maintain that right now as we continue the recovery process.
Thank you. Any other questions for Gail? All right, thank you. Peter, is there anything else in your superintendent's report?
So I do just want to say, and I did send this to all of you, that Principal Warner has announced his retirement at the end of this year. So I did send a letter out to parents today about that. So, you know, I just want to publicly thank Dan for his, you know, many years of service in Narragansett. He's been, you know, a terrific high school principal that has been truly dedicated to this community and to the students. You know, as I said in my letter, it is not easy being a high school administrator. And, you know, Dan has done it with good humor, grace, dedication, and really thinking about what is best for kids. So, certainly a great loss for our district. I'm happy for Dan. He's ready to move on to this next phase of his life. We will start the search right away, and so I'll be meeting with the Narragansett High School PTO tomorrow night just to get a little bit of feedback and start that process. And I will keep you updated as we go forward with that search.
And we will kind of formally recognize Dan with the other retirees. Was that at our May meeting or our June meeting?
That will be in our June meeting.
Okay.
And yes, we will send Dan off in style for sure.
Okay, so Dan will be here for our farewell remarks in June, but definitely congratulations to Dan. And I thought your letter was very, very well written, and I learned a lot about Dan that I didn't even know, and I didn't even realize that he's been at Narragansett High School for 20 years.
Almost 25. So he began as an assistant
Yes,
principal in
yes.
1999 and has been principal for 20 years.
Yeah, that's impressive. I don't know if that's a record for Rhode Island.
It's got to be close.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, best of luck to Dan, and we will do his formal farewell in June. Anything else, Pete?
Nope, that's all for me.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we are moving right along to consent agenda. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve consent agenda items CA1A, CA2A, CA2B, and CA2C?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. On to the budget report. Karen?
Expenditures for the 6 months ended December 31st, 2022, total $13,318,936, and that's 38.43% of our budget. Expenditures and encumbrances total $28,829,153, and that's 86.06% of our budget.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Karen? All right, so thank you. We're on to school committee business. Item number 1, is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the director of finance and administration to approve the contract with Wellness Flame LLC for consulting services as proposed in the amount of $20,000?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Pete, are you going to give us a soundbite?
I sure am.
Okay.
So I'd like to welcome up Renee Martin, who many of you know. And so one of the things that we've talked about quite a bit at this committee and in the district is mental health and wellness. And so Renee has been working with our district first through the Narragansett Prevention Partnership, and then through her own initiative to work with our schools. So Renee, we are proposing to have her work with our teachers, and Renee will talk a little bit about that, to help promote their own mental health, and with the idea of if we have teachers in a really good place, it helps put students in a really good place. And so Renee will talk a little bit about what she's proposing.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Cummings. Just to give those of you who don't know me a little background, I did work with the Narragansett Prevention Partnership for 7.5 years. Prior to that, in my pre-mother years, I was a cardiac nurse at Yale New Haven Hospital, and then I worked in cardiac rehabilitation for the Yale community as well. Since my departure from Narragansett Prevention Partnership, I went back to school. I got a certificate as a graduate in holistic nursing. And then I sat for and passed that board exam. And then last school year, I went back and got a registered nurse health and wellness coaching program. And then I passed that board as well. And then so in doing that, I started to really look at the school environment in a more holistic fashion. I was doing a lot of programming, going in, working with student groups, in small groups of students, and myself trying to get to all of the students. And then during COVID, when I was trying to do groups, the students had been on Zoom all day long, so really were not interested in a 30-minute club on Zoom. So I told them to go outside and play. And I started thinking about how I could be helpful to the environment and the crisis that we were facing through the pandemic. And so I went and got a certification in the heart math method of stress reduction and emotional regulation. And then I did a professional development for the teachers through that. I did the elementary school first. They really liked it. So then I was invited to give the training to all of the paraprofessionals in the district. Then I did the middle school and the high school following. Last year, I gave an update to all of the new hires, and in April of this year, I would like to give an update to all of the new hires this year as well. The Heart Math Institute in California is a very data-driven program. It's really very, very well done. So then I started to think a little bit more about how I could be helpful. I went just recently in November and December and got a Reiki certification. So for people who are a little bit less data-driven and don't like graphs as much, but really are more creative and like energy, so it can be effective with people that have that perspective as well. And so what I've done is kind of going back and really looking at the problem of teacher stress. Even pre-COVID, teacher stress was quite high. There was research that was done in 2017 and found that 61% of teachers found their jobs always or often stressful. And that is more than twice a conglomerate of other professions. And that was the first time actually that any other profession equaled nursing for the stress level on the job. Then during the COVID era, there was a survey that was done by the Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence and Castle. And in 3 days, 5,000 teachers answered the survey. And the question was to please describe the 3 most frequent emotions they felt each day during the pandemic. And those feelings were 95% rooted in anxiety. And so we know that as humans, our nervous system is constantly surveilling our surroundings. And so when our leaders are dysregulated, it is very dysregulating for us in the group. So if you take that perspective and put it into the classroom and you consider that teachers were 95% rooted in anxiety on most days, that has a serious impact on our students. After the nurse coaching program, the school that I went to then offered a business course to how to start your own practice. And one of the things that I was tasked to do was to define a niche that I wanted to work with, and I decided that I wanted to work with teachers. And so I began interviewing teachers. I interviewed teachers from our district. I interviewed teachers from Providence, South Kingstown, and Connecticut, so I could have a comparison so that I could understand, are these phenomena simply Narragansett, or are they more generalized? And the themes that came up were feelings of isolation, and that is that often teachers are kind of doing their own show in their own classroom, and throughout the day they have minimal opportunities to connect with other teachers and kind of have that opportunity to connect. They felt powerless, misunderstood, frustrated, and overwhelmed, and that they were spread too thin. A lot of times now, there's a lot of expectations placed on teachers that simply were not placed on teachers when I was a kid. It was academics, period, go home. Now it's social emotional for our students and a lot of other factors too. And now uncertainty and change is also an issue for them. And so the implications of the problems is we know that teachers are overwhelmed and burned out. We know that teachers are leaving the profession. We have a lot of staff turnover in all districts. We have a lot of sick days. And there are costs associated with the process of doing a search, doing the process of hiring teachers, doing the training and the induction. I saw one data piece that said that each teacher was about $30,000 for that process. And that process also, when you have that turnover and that non-continuity, that has an impact on student learning, okay? And then ultimately affects the test scores that we were just looking at. We're doing well with that. So my concept is to go from this isolated and stressed out people, because we know that these emotions matter for attention, memory, learning, decision-making, relationship building, health and well-being, and performance. And we can apply this to teachers, but when we think about how that might impact our students as well, we can see that it matters all the more. And I'd like to move it to more of a place like this. Henry Ford described coming together as a beginning, staying together as progress, and working together as success. And the Pennsylvania State University and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation 2017 did some research with regards to stress. And they looked at individual interventions, which would be stress management techniques and the heart math training that I did for the teachers. And that is giving individual teachers greater coping mechanisms. But if we don't then look farther than that, no matter how great your coping skills are, at some point, stressors are going to overwhelm you. So then we can begin to look at the interface between the individual teacher and the organization, and then also look at the organization as a whole and how we can help to reduce the stress levels. So another theme that I noticed in the interviews that I did, and that was interviews that I did last spring, and then I've also interviewed I doubled the amount, so another 11 teachers so far, teachers, administrators, and staff this year as well. Those who employed strong self-care practices reported increased feelings of competence, better health, more energy, and better ability to cope than those who did not. And the strategies that they reported to me are listed below. And so what I'd like to do is be able to offer programming that can help teachers to begin to employ these strategies not only in their lives, but also throughout their workday. And so through the program, the Health and Wellness Program and the Business Program, I came up with this acronym TEACH. TEACH stands for T is team building. And so we want to foster like stress management techniques for each individual, but also connections between our teachers, our staff, and our administrators. E is for everyday self-care. We can provide tips for teachers, and this could be strategies of I'm going to call Renee's 5 R's, and I'll get to that in a second. A is for appreciation, and that can be leading appreciative inquiry exercises at staff meetings, as well as getting an input from the teachers about what do they want to feel appreciated. So we can offer things to them like, coffee or, Dale's lemonade or whatever, but if it's not received in a way where they feel that this makes them feel appreciated, then we've lost the opportunity. So if we're going to spend money from the budget trying to do that, it makes sense to have their input so we can reach them in a good way. Communication, really want to come up with like event and solve, where not only are we hearing about problems that are perceived from teachers and staff, but also that they are brainstorming solutions to those. It can become very easy when you're stressed and overwhelmed and feeling burdened to come to a very negative place and find lots of problems. That's easy to do. If we then say, okay, what idea do we have to solve the problem? Then they become part of the solution. There's buy-in, and there's more facilitated conversation. And the H is for healing, which is strategies like heart math and like mindfulness that can take 30 seconds that we can work into the day, every day. I recently did a training with the heart math for the Rhode Island School Counselors Association up at the Crown Plaza. I had a very good turnout. And I had feedback from one of the counselors that told me that, I never thought of self-care as like little sound bites that I could do all day long. I thought of it as going to the gym for an hour and a half at the end of the day. But by the time I finished my workday, got home, took care of the family, made dinner, ate dinner, cleaned up from dinner, 8 o'clock going to the gym for an hour and a half didn't happen. So I wasn't doing self-care. So she had her eyes open that, self-care can equal an hour and a half workout at the gym, but can also equal 30 seconds of just taking a pause and a few deep breaths in some of these exercises. So the 5 R's are to redefine, and that's about mindset, all right? Becoming aware of your thoughts, really looking at your own personal perspectives and attitudes, and do those perceptions and attitudes and thoughts positively impact your self-care and your health and your habits, or does it sabotage that? R, revving your body. This is physical activity. I worked in nursing. I gave and distributed lots of medications in pharmacology. I'm also an exercise physiologist. I know how to write exercise prescriptions. I can't tell you how many pills I would not have had to give if I could have written an exercise prescription instead. So these are great things. Restoring. These are those momentary things that we can do every day. Just revel in the moment. Pause for a second. Take a look around you. This is a gorgeous building and a gorgeous room. But how often do we do that and really appreciate our environment and the moment that we're living in right now? Okay? Real food. So giving information to the teachers about, often we're on the fly and we just shove something in our mouth so we can carry on. But really, having the opportunity and doing some planning and getting some real food into the diet can help us to rebuild and replenish our body, right? Stabilize your energy or blood sugar, really, and then afford that healthy glow that we all really want to have. And then rewarding relationships. We already talked about relationships among staff, teachers, and administrators, but also our relationship with ourselves. If we're going to be able to have the capacity for empathy for others, it begins with having empathy for ourselves and working on a positive relationship with ourselves. And so ultimately, the value of investing in our personnel is that we can help reduce the stress. And that helps people feel better emotionally and physically. We can help people to feel heard. That's very validating, and it makes us feel respected and valued. We can build connections with each other, and that leads to support and a feeling of belonging. And that's a very human need that we all have. Improved energy and well-being for all of us. That will help to decrease absenteeism. That was one of the things that we were marked low for. Input on policies that affect their jobs so that people feel empowered and then they get buy-in. And ultimately, it's about supporting the well-being of everyone who works here because we're all trying to work towards the success of our students. I don't know if there's any questions. That's it.
Any questions from the school committee? Diane?
How often, Renee, do you anticipate doing the training, and when would it be? Would it be before school, during school, after school, on PD days, or?
Yeah, so the first thing I'm going to start with is the February staff meetings, because I want to get in there and start explaining to the staff what the intentions are with this program, but also to start some of these exercises with them and getting them into a daily process. I want to get their input on what's going to work for them before school, after school, what opportunities do I have to get into the school during their day so I can impact them. It could be just, leaving things in the staff room would be one thing, but how can I meet with them during their day and what kind of opportunities do they have? So my anticipation is that I'll be making myself very available.
Okay. And just one thing, I'm sure it was just a typo, but the ending date was February 2023 in the letter instead of 2024 under investment.
Oh, no, that's not the end date of the program. That was for the investment, for the financial investment.
Thank you.
So one of the things I would say is part of the strategic plan that we have that we'll be looking at throughout the spring as we go on to our new kind of 5-year goals is really investing in our faculty and really making sure that they are in a place where they can do their best work with students, and they have to be in a good place themselves. There's lots of research out there, and Renee cited a little bit of it, around how the job has changed over the last few years. And I think, we have all seen that in all walks of life. And one of the areas where we really need to put some energy is making sure that we are investing in making sure that the staff that we have are doing the best job possible. We don't have a lot of turnover in Narragansett. We have an excellent teaching staff, but they need support. And, it's a really busy, jam-packed day for our teachers throughout. They're scheduled almost every minute. They do have lots of time for collaboration, but they also need some time to make sure that they are building positive relationships with each other and also taking care of themselves. And so, Renee talked to me about this opportunity. In talking with our principals, it does seem like a great way to introduce the concept of making sure that you're taking care of yourself. And when I was chatting with Renee, one of the analogies she used was that, when you're in an airplane and things are not going right, they say put your air mask on yourself first, right? And then you can take care of other people. And I think that analogy really holds true for some of our staff more than others. Some of our staff may not take advantage of this opportunity. There are others that really need it.
Yeah, this is going through the programs in the nursing school was, there's a lot of talk about nursing in hospitals. And I listened to all of that going through the program, and I really drew a parallel between what nurses are experiencing in hospitals with regards to the stress and the changing demands of the job. And the whole time I was sitting there thinking, well, we're having a parallel experience with teachers in schools as well. And so, those of us that are drawn to helping professions are very other-oriented, and we have a tendency to put others first. And so taking that pause and really having time and investing in our own well-being is really important.
Any other, so we have a motion on the floor. Any other questions or comments from the school committee before we vote?
Just a quick soundbite, just to, really appreciate that this motion is on the floor. This is certainly a very familiar, unfortunately, issue that's been brought up at Health and Wellness Committee meetings and at our school committee meetings as well. And, I really appreciate the initiative here to really answer the call from teachers who have echoed their concerns about how much stress has been put on them, and to see a very alarming statistic of 61% of teachers in 2017, probably even higher now, have rated their job experience as being often, if not always, stressful. And really, any initiative that we can take to help alleviate that and address those concerns is, I applaud and really appreciate that. Just a real quick question in regards to the feedback that you're gathering from teachers. And I assume this is across all 3 public schools, not just at the high school. How are you going about collecting that kind of information? Some teachers may be stressed to even share information about how stressful they are. So just was wondering what kind of an environment, are we creating a safe space for them to be able to share this information? Can they just come to talk to you to share their feedback? Because we also want to respect their, confidentiality if they choose to.
Absolutely. And as a nurse, I'm held to confidentiality standards. So the first round of interviews that I did was for the program that I was in for the business, and that I had scheduled Zoom calls with the teachers. And then this year I've had one-on-one time that I've scheduled with various staff, teachers, and administrators, because I really want to get a good cross sample and experiences from them. If I don't understand their lived experience, I'm not going to be able to help them effectively.
And were these teachers chosen at random, or did they come to you?
They didn't come to me, no.
Okay.
Yeah, nope.
Just curious. So again, thank you for sharing this initiative, and I look forward to hearing more about the programs as they come up. And that was my other follow-up question. Are you going to personally be going in and running these, or are you going to have a team?
This is my LLC. I alone run it, and I will be doing the programming.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for all that you're doing for us.
My pleasure.
Any other, Jen, question, comment?
Just as a teacher, again, I want to applaud Narragansett for really looking at this. It's your background is phenomenal. I think it's amazing that you were able to make the connection between, nurses and teachers. I guess my one question really is to Dr. Cummings, just is there any way we can incentivize the teachers to really take this? Can we give them PR hours, professional responsibility? Do you know what I'm saying? Can we do that, under RIDE? Can we figure out a way to do that?
So we're going to begin with introducing this at staff meetings, which is, really in place of other things that we could be doing in staff meetings. And, we've contracted with Renee so that it's not the intent is not to make it one more thing to do, right? The intent is really to build it into the life of school and to give people opportunities to engage in this. For some people, that will be during the school day because they may have other responsibilities outside of the school day, family, that type of thing, that they couldn't do it otherwise. For others, they may not want to engage during the school day. They may want to do it before or after school. So Renee and I have talked a lot about kind of flexible scheduling. And then once we're introduced and really have a pattern, one of the, we're hoping more people will engage in this process. Some we may encourage. And the great thing about having Renee do this work is that, she is a familiar face. She's a parent in town. Lots of our teachers have taught her children or gotten to know her through her work with the Prevention Partnership. So those relationships already exist in many cases. So we're hoping to take advantage of it because of that.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Renee. I'm very
Thank
excited
you.
about this.
Me
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you very much.
On to item number 2. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the director of finance and administration to approve the purchase of Chromebooks and laptops for the student one-to-one device rollout from Dell Technologies at a total cost of $90,134.85?
So moved.
Discussion?
Good evening. Coming to you again at the same time as I did last year, as we found out, for 2 reasons. One, there is still a supply chain issue that exists out there. We've running into it with our auditorium project. If you tried to buy a vehicle, anything, it's still out there. And with Dell's fiscal year ending in January, we get the most aggressive pricing. So we've reached out, we've got our pricing here. This is for 2-in-1 Chromebooks for the incoming 1st grade for next year, and then incoming 5th grade and 9th grade, 5th grade and 9th grade Chromebooks. We're making this transition now from full Windows laptops to Chromebooks. We had a great discussion at our district tech committee meeting and internally with my tech team, and we reviewed all of the programs, applications that students currently use on their Windows laptops, and everything has moved to the cloud now. So they don't really need a full Windows laptop where they need to load applications on. Everything's available through the cloud. At the same time, that doesn't mean all of the existing laptops we have, we're just going to dispose of. I'll be coming to you probably in May or June with a secondary purchase for Google Chrome licenses, which we can transition all of our Windows laptops into Chromebooks by just buying a Chrome OS Flex license for it. That way we can manage it in the Google environment and we can continue to use those devices. It's a one-time cost of about $30 per laptop, but this also gets around some of the security issues that are going to be forced upon us by cybersecurity insurance, where they're requiring no longer just basic antivirus on those Windows devices. They want remediation and detection, which is a lot more money, which, upwards of 60, 80 just for that package per device, per Windows laptop. And that's a recurring fee. This Google Chrome license that I'll be coming to you with is a perpetual license. We buy it once for the device, and it's good for the life of the device. And any Chromebooks that we currently buy, those licenses already exist. So once again, just trying to take advantage of the time, get this in at the most aggressive pricing we can, and get it in time for us to do our summer work to prepare all of these for September.
That sounds great. Any questions or comments? Alex?
Just once again, a very thorough presentation. I expect nothing less. And just a quick question, do we take into consideration like backups, like backup laptops, or are we always just taking into consideration how many students we're going to be getting in?
We look at the projection, and then we always purchase about 10% extra, a little more at the high school, because we really never know what that CTE situation is going to be like. We never really know how many Jamestown kids are going to come. So that's kind of a fluid, but we always purchase around 10% extra to have that ability.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Jen?
I'd just like to say that I think this is definitely a must at this time. I think your analysis, your team's analysis is right on as to the cloud and security. And I think that if we don't do this now, then we're going to incur more costs later. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other final questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, with Julio, number 3, is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the director of finance and administration to approve the purchase of laptops and docks for teachers at NES from Dell Technologies at a total cost of $69,680.94?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Same type of thing coming to you because of the pricing, supply chain shortage, and this is just something that we budgeted for. We're on that cycle where every year we purchase for first grade, fifth grade, ninth grade students, and every year we rotate who we purchase for as far as schools. Last year was middle school, all of middle school teachers. For next year, it'll be this elementary school teachers. The following year would be high school, and the year after that is any administrator, staff, secretaries. So it's a 4-year rotation. We can project exactly what we're buying each year, and we, life expectancy of a device is 4 years, so it's a perfect rotation. Jack at the elementary school met with every teacher. We gave them the option of a 2-in-1 Windows laptop or a clamshell. Most of them chose the 2-in-1 because they use it, especially at that grade level, interacting with their students. So this is basically it. And 25 docks, we did not purchase the full amount to match the laptops because Jack went around and did an analysis of all the docks we currently have. Some were in bad shape, some weren't in great shape at all, some were. So we just assessed how many we really would need to replace. We didn't want to have to replace all of them if we didn't need to. So we came up with that 25 number instead of purchasing the full 47, and it just saves the district some money.
All right, any questions or comments? Diane?
What's a clamshell? Is that
Oh,
a new
clamshell,
model?
it's a non-2-in-1 touch, so it's just a basic laptop. They call that a clamshell model because it doesn't have the touch feature of it. So they basically call them 2-in-1s or a clamshell model.
Okay, it's not just for Rhode Island then?
No, not at all. No. It is fitting, though.
Just a quick question. In regards to the projection from last year, are we coming in around the same?
Yeah,
number?
well, actually, this is the Windows laptops for the teachers. I budget around $1,500 for, so it's coming in right at that number. And for the student devices that we just approved, they're actually coming in a lot less because of that switch from Windows to Chromebooks. And even the other one, every single model has been upgraded. And even for like the basic Chromebooks, it was only about a $30 increase, which, the rate of inflation and the way the supply chain is right now, that's not a significant increase whatsoever. And it's what I projected.
One last comment. I think it's really awesome, the input. I have a first grader right now, and she has a 2-in-1.
Yeah.
And night and day, she wouldn't be able to function probably without it. Would be really frustrating for them. So in order for ease, I think you guys are right on top of the ball, and thank you for taking their input. In a small district, those are the kinds of things that can save us a lot of money.
Yeah, we
in the
did
future.
listen. We took that feedback from the first grade teachers last year, where some of their struggle, they were wasting a lot of time teaching, moving from the iPad to that keyboard only, where we give that option now where they can kind of slowly, gradually move into that keyboard. And they've raved about it, and I said I would continue to support it as much as I could.
Any other questions or comments? Diane?
We've been with Dell ever since we started the one-on-one program, is that
Correct,
correct?
yeah,
So are
yeah.
we getting a longevity discount?
There's no longevity. It's part of the state MPA, but they always treat us well based on the partnership we've had. And actually, prior to that, we've always purchased Dell too. We have over a 20-year Roland had started that. We have over a 20-year partnership with them. Their devices are top-notch. I mean, if you look around, everyone would prefer Dell. And they do right by us as far as pricing and warranties, everything.
Any other questions or comments? Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And the number 4, is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the director of finance and administration to approve the purchase of a 1-year site license and webinar training for Edgenuity from Imagine Learning in the amount of $10,750?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you again. So
At the high school, we were looking at our virtual learning options this year. And we've been using several different virtual learning options to satisfy several different needs. So to kind of streamline that process, what we wanted to do is look for one program that could do all of that. And what we did was we settled upon Ingenuity. So in order to make that decision, we used research from the Ed Research for Design from the Annenberg Institute out of Brown University, where they basically looked at their findings were that there are 3 things that help students be successful in a credit recovery and virtual learning option, and that's a hybrid delivery, progress monitoring, and the ability to create purposeful class sizes. So we determined that Ingenuity was the best option for this. So we're just going to walk through a couple of the virtual learning options at the high school that are being used, and then how Ingenuity can serve the same purpose as those. So we currently have 6 students at the high school who are on the Connections Academy. The Connections Academy is a virtual option run through the state. Students are finding a lot of success with it, but it is very expensive. It basically ends up being almost $1,000 a month per student. So for 10 months, the numbers really add up there. And they're also no longer going to be offering that as a service next year. They're discontinuing due to low enrollment. So we'll lose that option for a virtual option for students. For credit recovery, we're currently using a program called EduSeer. EduSeer has a live teacher connected to it, but it's not a Narragansett teacher. Courses on EduSeer range from $99.50 to $199.50. And there's also an allotted time that students have to complete that in. And then if they do not complete it in that time, we have to pay for an extension for them to continue accessing that. And just by the nature of credit recovery and a credit recovery student, they tend to take a little bit longer and delay. So we often end up paying for extensions with those students. There's some other options out there as well. ACN is another virtual learning option through RIDE. It's actually free, but it does not offer any of our core classes except English. And the other issue with ACN is you have to enroll kids before the semester begins. So it's not as responsive to student need as they come up. So finally, we landed on Ingenuity. So it is a program that offers virtual learning and credit recovery. So we deemed that it met our needs of hybrid delivery, progress monitoring, and purposeful class sizes the best. So I talked to administrators and teachers in 3 different school districts who use the program, and the 3 districts are very different. So it's Lincoln, Cranston East, and Westerly. So all 3 school districts use that program at the high school, but they all use it very differently in a way that satisfies their needs. So the program is flexible enough that we can adjust it to meet the needs of Narragansett students in the best way possible. And this all connects back to what Gail was talking about at the beginning with accountability. So this would help boost our graduation rates and would also help boost our participation because rather than having students go to the Connections Academy where they might be losing that connection to Narragansett High School, we will have designated adults and staff members who will be responsible for working with those students and touching base with them. We are also working to have teachers after school from each content area work with students in credit recovery, so they also have a content specialist in the room.
Any questions for Connor?
Just, and thank you again for providing us with the breakdown of each of these different programs. And I guess just, if you could just expand a little more on the difference between EduSeer and Edgenuity, very similar names already.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to grasp like the bigger picture here. I guess if I'm understanding correctly, EduSeer is monitored by a teacher virtually, and we're going to have another staff member currently at the high school take on another role?
It is. So Edgenuity, and I'll jump in for a
Yeah.
second, Connor. So what Edgenuity does is that it blends much more easily with our current program. So what happens is that the EduSeer is pretty much a self-contained course for a credit recovery. And while our goal is for no students to need credit recovery, the nature of some students in their road to graduation and development is that they need sometimes opportunities to have a do-over. And what Edgenuity allows us to do is not to have to retake the whole class. So you may have a student who passes 3/4 of their English 11, and they have to make up 1/4 of work in order to earn that credit. This allows us to have more targeted interventions with students along the way. It is our hope that with a more flexible schedule that we're beginning next year, is that for some students who fall behind, they may be able to get some of this credit recovery done during the school day. One of our challenges is getting students to stay to make up the credits. And so often, when you are in that phase of your life, you're not recognizing the long-term impact of not making up those credits. And so we try to get students to engage in that. It is a challenge to have students in Narragansett do that over the summer. So we do not get students really deeply engaged in work over the summer. Despite our best efforts, we have made every effort to staff it, to incentivize it, to get kids to be there. The lure of the beach is a little bit too great. And so kind of building that into our school year is probably responsive to our community, which is what we really want to do long term. And what we also like about this, and I know Connor alluded to this, is that we can have some targeted interventions from our own teachers that are using this as a resource in order to make up what they need to know. So when you look at the combination of all those things, students that are exiting from the Connections Academy that do need a virtual option, students that need to do credit recovery, and students that may want to extend a course that we might not offer. So for example, we don't offer Chinese, right? But there may be a student who really wants to take Chinese. Well, this virtual option allows us to do that. I don't know if they actually have Chinese, I'm making that up, but again, okay, but we are looking for those options.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the feedback and the explanations there, the targeted interventions and the flexibility here. And since there seems to be an overall theme of trying to reduce stress, it sounds like this is a great option to, allow every individual to have, take their time through the academic recovery process and, not have to squeeze it in a very tight deadline, that there's a lot of ways in which we can meet the needs of the individual student.
I appreciate you saying that, Alex. I think, individualizing each child's experience, I think is important, and this allows us another tool to do that, and so that students who may have some bumps along the way, it's not necessarily going to be a situation where they can't graduate on time or close to on time. This is another tool that allows us to help them.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Just one quick one. In your letter, you mentioned you worked with Mr. Warner and with Mrs. Standerin and Dr. Cummings. Did you also touch bases with Julio since it's a virtual platform?
Yeah, I did, him and Mr. Emery, and then I also talked to guidance counselors as well. So the big thing with this is it puts a lot of the progress monitoring in the hands of the teacher. So a lot of those tech options wouldn't be falling on Julio or Derek. They would be more based with the guidance counselor and the teacher who's responsible for it. So you can create breakdowns, progress reports. You can lock assessments. There's a lot of options that are at the hands of teachers to be in control of.
Any other questions for Connor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much for staying so late.
Yes, thank you.
Pete, we'll have to look at the order here. Poor Connor here was at the very end of the night, 3 days before the holiday with 9 o'clock presentation on the schedule. Now we've got him last at almost 9 o'clock again, so.
Connor's got a young baby. He's not sleeping. So, yeah. So,
Well, he
he's up
still has to
anyway.
be at work in like
Right.
8 hours. All
So-
right, so thank you very much, Connor. So our last item is not a vote, it's just a discussion. So it is that time of year, believe it or not, to look at the 23-24 calendar. So we will get some input from Pete. We'll give him some feedback, and then we'll put this on the agenda for next month for a vote. So Pete, can you just kind of give us a high-level overview? And as part of that overview, I do see Election Day on here, and I don't think we need to have that. Like, I think that is, like, if you strike that, because we're on every other year, and we just got elected, and you just got stuck with us. So there shouldn't be any reason for a closure, because the local elections will not, like, school committee, town council's not up, president's not up, so.
Yes, so we'll make that correction.
Okay, all right, so high-level overview, Pete.
And so really what we're looking at is, first of all, just for you all to know the history. It used to be that all the different towns made their own calendars. We would try to coordinate with regional towns, and with South County, the superintendents usually try to chat because most of our staff lives within one of our neighboring towns or reasonably close. And so we try to coordinate just to make sure that we're not going to be short-staffed. If someone has a vacation and someone else doesn't, it really becomes a staffing issue. And so what we are proposing in this calendar is we have 4 professional development days in our contract. And so we'd like to use 3 of them at the beginning of the year. And so that really helps our teachers to, if you think about it, front load a lot of the PD that they're going to be needing throughout the year. So that's training in new programs. That's kind of a lot of the reading work that we do. And so, so we load that at the beginning of the year. New teachers get 2 additional days for induction and kind of onboarding as a part of that. We, again, start after Labor Day. That seems to be a real need of the community to start after Labor Day. There are some districts that start before and try to get out earlier. In our beach community, people really strongly, year after year, want to start after Labor Day. So if you look through, we will switch that November day for sure. Traditionally, we have taken the Wednesday before Thanksgiving has been a day off, and that's a part of our contract and an agreement we have with the teachers union because they are staying late on several conference days, and so we give that Wednesday as a give back for that piece. The December holiday is actually a little bit short this year. And so January 1st is a Monday, but it's a little bit shorter of a winter break. We do have the February vacation in there. And, again, if the state calendar comes out with a different version of that, we can certainly adjust that along the way. But RIDE has not said that they're going to put out their kind of model calendar anytime soon. Finally, we do have the April break in there. One of the new things and that we are trying to work around is the Juneteenth holiday on June 19th. And so just for you all to know, that's in the calendar for next year. One of the debates, and I'm still gathering a little bit of input, so you may see a slight difference on a future calendar, is figuring out that 4th PD day. And so we have the option to either use that as after-school meetings, and so we could do a series of 6 one-hour after-school meetings for teachers for PD, or we could do 1 full day in the spring, and Gail and I are still working out which one we want to do. All right, but that's the general idea. But, I would recommend to you, we've had some success with, it usually comes down to, are you going to have February break or not have February break? The state calendar pretty regularly right now is having that February break. I would recommend to you just, be prepared to follow the guidance of the state calendar. In general, you have the right not to do that. But if every other district around us is following that state calendar, that provides some challenges for staffing for us because we end up having a lot of teachers needing time for family needs.
I think it looks great as it is. I think that, you know, you don't run into conflicts if you have that full week, because then there's no childcare issues and other issues. If other districts are doing a shortened one, you don't have to have high teacher absences and childcare issues and high student absences for families that are going to pull their kids out of school for the week anyway. The whole, you know, give the schools a hard cleaning, with all, you know, all that stuff. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. Where we end up, you know, really stuck is when there's primary day and election day, and Labor Day is like September 7th, and then you're looking at, holy cow, we're looking at, you know, June 23rd before snow days, but this is not, you know, at all anywhere near that. And with election day being a school day, then you're looking at June 17th as the last day, like you said, if you put a PD day in, but, you know, you're still in really good shape with it not being too terribly late. So I think it's great how it is.
And just as a reminder, you know, our snow day policy, we did apply for to have get approved for virtual learning days. We have been approved by RIDE for that. You know, our general guidance and policy is to have 3 emergency closing days before we start going to virtual days. And so again, and we call them emergency closing because we've had to close, for example, for storms, for power outages, for that type of thing. We've been fortunate. Let's hope it doesn't come back and bite me by talking about it. But we've been fortunate in that we haven't had to have those so far this year. Yes, exactly. But we do consider that when we build the calendar, that there will be probably at least typically 3 makeup days from emergency closing days should we need to use them.
So does the committee have any questions or comments or feedback for Pete?
I just had one question. Is the Friday before Labor Day contracted in the teacher's contract to have off?
It is not, but typically what happens is that that's a really challenging day traffic-wise and just in this community, a very busy time. And so lots of our teachers and students are involved in community things for that Labor Day weekend. So we've found that we have a lot of success kind of building those PD days in the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday beforehand. And there's really, in talking with the teachers, they would prefer to do that way rather than have it be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that from a teacher's perspective, I think that's fair. And from a business owner's perspective in the town and with URI kids moving in, I think it's really important that we start after Labor Day. I think that that's good that that's built into the schedule. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I think we're good to put that on as a voting item pretty much as is for next month.
Great. And like I said, Gail and I will talk a little bit about where to put that other PD day.
All right, great. Are there any communications that anyone wants to mention? Okay, our regular business meeting is February 15th at 7 o'clock. Is there a motion to adjourn at 8:56?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a good night.